Now, I assume that you're not surprised by the legal, I guess the legal challenge. I mean, it seems like most people are not. Are you surprised by it?
No, not surprised at all. We anticipated a legal challenge, but it just seems crazy to me that people want to challenge a bill that literally makes $25 million available to every poor kid in Kentucky to help better their education. I continue to be baffled by why folks fight these kind of things.
What do you say to people who say that the government shouldn't be involved in funding private schools? And I guess they're not directly, but indirectly, are they providing money to private schools? What do you say to that argument?
You know, Larry, the reality is this bill applies to every school child whose family is at 175% of the free and reduced lunch level. So we're talking about poor kids in every public school. And the bill makes available the money for 14 different things for public schools. And then only a small portion of it is available for tuition to be used at a non-public school. That doesn't mean it has to be a religious school. And look, when you go and look at our tax code, we give breaks all the time for people with respect to making, for example, charitable donations to your church. You get a tax break for that. How is that not unconstitutional? This challenge that's coming up right now, and I haven't had a chance to look at the lawsuit yet, but the Supreme Court of the United States already ruled last year in a Montana case that everything here is completely constitutional.
Yeah, they actually ruled in 2002 as well in the Zellman versus Cementeris case we were talking about earlier in the program, where they basically ruled that it's not a violation, that it's not unconstitutional. The voucher program and tax scholarship credits are not unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution. I mean, I don't see what is the argument they're going to be making if it's already ruled that it's constitutional. I mean, what narrow argument are they going to make that's different than what's been argued before?
Absolutely, I have no idea. Like I said, I haven't seen the lawsuit, but keep one thing in mind. Unlike those other bills, ours is not a voucher bill. Ours isn't even scholarship tax credit, and ours applies to public school kids too. So why would these groups that claim to be pro-public school, pro-student, why would they want to take away this money for poor kids to get help with tutoring, for online classes, for school books, for a computer, all of these amazing things that kids could use this money for, and yet they want to fight it? I don't understand.
We're talking to Representative Chad McCoy about a new law in Kentucky that's being challenged legally, that it's unconstitutional. The argument seems to be made by the group that it's taking money away from public school systems. Is there any money that directly goes towards to these private schools, or is it all from private donations?
Everything in this bill would be a private donation to an education opportunity granting authority. And then the grantors, the ones who made the donation, they would get a tax credit through the Department of Revenue. So no money has come into the government at that point at all. Then what happens is families would apply. So let's say you had a child, you met the poverty requirements, and your child lived in eastern Kentucky where they didn't have a calculus class, and they wanted to take an online calculus class. You would apply saying, here's the tuition money we're going to need for that class. Then the Educational Opportunity Grant would pay for that. So the argument, there's first of all, there's no government money going to any private schools anywhere here, especially no religious schools. But more importantly, it's just money that's available for everybody. And so I really don't, like I keep saying, I just don't understand why they're challenging this thing.
Well, they say that it's taking money away from the public school system. Then how does it do that? I mean, are they speculating that the tax relief that's being given to the people who are making these donations would pay higher taxes, therefore there'd be more money available to the public schools? Is that the argument that they're making? Because it would seem like the funding for schools is set, so whatever additional revenue that gets generated, it wouldn't increase the amount that the schools get, would it? I mean, they get what's been budgeted to them, don't they?
That's right. They get what's been budgeted. And ultimately, when I first took over this bill, Larry, I met with these groups to try to address some concerns they had, and they had some legitimate concerns. But at the end of the day, we came down to any dollar we don't spend on public education, they think is a dollar we should spend on public education. But if you're going to go there, then that means everything we do in the government they should be crying against. Every dollar we spend on the police, that's a dollar we didn't spend on public education. Every dollar we spend on a social program, that's a dollar we didn't spend on public education. So it's really an illogical argument, and you hit the nail on the head. We budget through the SEEK formula, and that's the money. It doesn't matter if our revenue goes way up or is way down. We've already allocated our money to how we're going to fund our public schools. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that we're doing right now, and you got to remember, when the House majority took over, the Republicans 5 years ago now, we have funded public education more dollars than ever in the history of the state. And what we did this year is we're taking a hard look at the SEEK formula and whether or not we're actually funding schools in the right way. And quite frankly, this case may be an opportunity to sort of open all of that back up. If you go back to the late 90s when the whole CARA conversation occurred, what the court found at the time was we weren't funding across the board in an equality way that we needed to. And I still don't think we are. Because when you look at the impact of local taxes, let's take Oldham County, for example, a lot of local tax money there, so the state doesn't give those students very, very much in SEEK money. Whereas you take Owsley County, for example, where they don't have as high of a local tax base, the state has to give more in SEEK money. So we're already not being fair with public education dollars. So maybe this is a chance for us to really get in there and do some good on that.
I believe in school choice. I mean, I've talked about this on my program a lot. You have kids that are relegated to going to schools that underperform, consistently, historically underperform. What choices do they have if they are a kid that's got a lot of academic potential or is academically motivated? What choices do they have of the school that they are relegated to going to? They're through districting. Is a poor school. What choices do they have? I think the kids should be able. I mean, this is not necessarily germane to this particular conversation, but I think if a kid is in a particular district of a public school system, he should be able to go to a different district, a different school system, public school system, if it better suits his or her needs. So I'm all for that.
That's exactly what this bill does. Part of the bill, if you ever notice, I've seen a couple of the articles that talk about the lawsuit. They didn't challenge that other part. But that's exactly what we did in here. We opened it up. I call it school without borders. Public school kids ought to have the right to go to any public school they want to go to and have their state funding follow them.
I know that it's a controversial issue. For life, I don't really know why, because charter schools, there's empirical evidence showing that the same kids we're talking about now, kids going in that are in sort of underserved areas, historically benefited at a higher percentage by charter schools, and the number of kids in charter schools are weighted, in favor of kids of color. And I mean, I don't know if you're a fan of Thomas Sowell. I'm a big fan of his. I'm reading his book now, Charter Schools and Our Enemies, and he makes a compelling case as to why charter schools should be available across the country, and there's no legitimate argument against them. Is there anything in this piece of legislation that addresses charter schools to create more access there?
We didn't expressly address them, but keep in mind something about Kentucky's charter school law. All of our charter schools are public schools. So any of these EOA accounts, these educational opportunity accounts that offer money to poor kids to go to a public school, well, since charter schools are public schools, I think it would apply there as well. Mm-hmm. But it was not expressly a part of this law.
Chad, I appreciate it. Representative McCoy, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I know that this case, this lawsuit is fresh in the news, and we're learning more about it. I mean, I am, certainly you are as well. I'd like to maybe reach out to you again once we start to see it sort of work its way through the system and learn more about it and get your thoughts again about it in the future. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Good talking to you.
Thank you. Give me a call anytime. Glad to talk about it.